I'm happy today to talk about our ongoing activities at Catalent around the iPSCs, their generation and manipulation. So to start with, I would just like to give a brief intro into the iPSC add-on to Catalent. So this was a recent acquisition, basically done last year. The original company was called Rheincell, located here in the Cologne, Düsseldorf metropolitan area, and our aim here was to generate a clinical grade universal starting material, so iPS cells under GMP conditions, to form the basis for future workflows in cell therapy. And now being part of Catalent, I think this really creates new opportunities, not only for our side here, but also vice versa, to really harness the full potential of these cells. So, for example, we have extensive manufacturing capabilities now within Catalent at Houston, as well as at our site in Belgium, in Gosselies, even for commercial scale cell therapy manufacturing beyond the phase 3 clinical trials. And in turn, I think we can really profit now from the resources that there are at Catalent. For example, plasmid manufacturing at GMP quality, as well as other modalities, which can now serve as reagents in GMP workflows using iPSC. So we really hope to create these kind of synergies at Catalent now. So what I would like to focus on now is the manufacturing workflow. So as we have set it up with the iPSCs, and also highlight the pipeline for quality control that we've set up, and also come to talk about the starting material that we use here in the manufacturing process. And later on, I will talk about more current and ongoing activities in terms of differentiation of the iPSCs and development of future workflows, and also come to talk about the overall strategy for reprogramming. So the manufacturing workflow is based on a rather simple workflow using episomal reprogramming. We try to keep things simple and robust here, really, to make sure that reprogramming experiments and workflows really work every time we perform them. And this is all done with the iPS-Brew medium from Miltenyi. At the time, I can say it was one of two media on the market, GMP grade iPSC media on the market, and we compared these against each other, and simply found that the iPS-Brew medium was superior. So we stick to that and build a workflow based on that medium. Otherwise, we are using xeno-free culture conditions, chemically defined culture conditions, as you would expect from a GMP workflow. And like I said, keep things really actually quite simple and manual. So the workflow starts with import of hematopoietic stem cells from a collaborating cord blood facility. So this is a GMP grade starting material, and we then introduce this into our cleanroom facility here in the building, to then subject cells to reprogramming, and this will give rise to single lines, single colonies that are being isolated and grown up to independent cell lines. So we are establishing several cell lines for each donor, and we're then making a quality assessment and proceed with one selected clones while we freeze stocks of these candidate clones, so keep them for potential later use. But this one selected cell line is then grown up, and until the vectors that are used for reprogramming are fully eliminated, and finally the cells are expanded and cryopreserved. And all the QC is obviously taking place, or most of the QC is taking place then outside the cleanroom facility in dedicated QC labs. So the QC assays can be subdivided into different categories, if you will, into safety-related assays into assays looking at genomic integrity of the cells and into assays that address cell type specific characteristics, so differentiation potential of the iPS cells, for example. So we're trying to address these all these important points using a panel of assays, and I would just like to highlight a few examples. So this is showing you in-process controls that are carried out in the clean room. We're taking samples at regular intervals and really use stringent Tacnon-based assays to verify that the vectors are becoming eliminated over time in the cells. And only if we observe that repeatedly over several passages, we would switch over to amplifying the cells and cryopreserve them. Another important issue is the genomic integrity, like I mentioned. So we're doing, on the one hand, classical karyotyping, following international standards for tumor diagnostics. So this involves numerical analysis as well as structural ones, using multiple metaphase spreads. But in addition to that, we're also using full genomic sequencing to assess the mutation load in these cells and to rule out that there are functional mutations in cancer-associated genes, for example. So on the right-hand side, you see an analysis in this regard, where we also revealed that the mutation load in our lines tends to be rather low. So you see the four data points on the right-hand side in comparison to iPS cells derived from adult starting material. So we could really trace this down to the starting material, which is, I think, implies really a key advantage of here using cord blood. And with regards to the specific properties of the iPS cells, we're certainly assessing differentiation potential in several ways. On the one hand, of course, in the GMP QC workflow, where we mostly look at semi-spontaneous differentiation, but we're also developing, and our clients are testing cells for directed differentiation capability. So we have generated endothelial cells from these lines, as well as pure RPE cells with a new protocol that we've developed, and we've also subjected these cells to cardiac induction at high efficiency in all cases. So we're quite happy with the properties of these cells indeed. Just briefly to summarize the points about the starting material that I already mentioned in part. So we think that cord blood is a preferred starting material for reprogramming iPS cells for clinical use. First of all, because it's clinical material by itself. It's used for therapeutic purposes, and as such, it's extensively pre-tested for viral contaminations, for example. So we're building on that material. And another biological argument is really the fact that these cells are neonatal, so the mutation load in that material is really low, and that translates into the iPS cells, as I tried to indicate. Now, in the final part, I would just like to highlight a few workflows that we're working on. So we are now building on what we have basically on the iPSCs. We would like to establish differentiation protocols and GMP compatible workflows on that basis. And I would also like to highlight the overall strategy we use for generating the iPS cells. And I'd like to start with that aspect. So as you know, when setting up an allogeneic approach based on iPSCs, you will face the issue of immune rejection, simply because donor and recipient are not identical, and the cells are easily becoming rejected in the patient under normal circumstances. So there are approaches needed really to address that issue, because immune suppression, which could of course be applied, but always comes with side effects, quite severe side effects actually. Our strategy to address this issue is to use HLA-homozygous donors as a starting material. So it's a rare condition in the population to be HLA-homozygous. This occurs at really low frequency, and we're, so to speak, cherry picking our our cord blood bank for these privileged individuals. Because using HLA-homozygous cells, as indicated here with these color codes, really simplifies the challenge of immune matching. So it's much easier to find matching recipient patients using HLA-homozygous cells, because you only need to consider one of the two parental HLA alleles for each gene, as shown here, indicated here with these color codes. Of course, I should also mention complementary strategies to achieve immune compatibility, and gene editing is the most prominent one in this regard. So you can think of manipulating HLA genes as well as other genes to make the cells immune compatible to basically any potential recipient in the population. And there are also hybrid approaches where you're using HLA-homozygous cells as a starting source and then do a partial deletion of the HLA genes, for example, so to enhance their immune compatibility. And so I think these different approaches, they're definitely not competing, they're complementary. And in fact, we think that the HLA-homozygous iPS cells that we've generated would also present a great starting material for enhancing the applicability of these lines by gene editing. Discussing the homozygous HLA-homozygous approach. So these are some calculations that we performed where basically compatibility of the cells to the population is plotted against the individual genotypes, the HLA haplotypes, and these are ranked here according to frequency in the population. So you see the most frequent HLA haplotypes on the left of the left-hand chart, and you can infer from such calculations that we just need a handful of, or maybe 10 cell lines or so to, in our case, to basically match every second patient in the population, which I think would be great. Like I said, gene editing can also help to increase the matchability in the population, and also obtain access to other populations. So yeah, the overall applicability of these cell lines could be enhanced this way. On the right-hand side, you see the current status where we are. So you see that we basically have access to the most frequent haplotypes, making this strategy, I think, a viable one. But we've also learned really over the last years that other things play a role as well. And an important point here is really donor eligibility, so qualification of donors in terms of regulatory requirements in the US or in the European Union, as well as in Japan, for example. So we're trying to really explicitly match these requirements with new cell lines. So for the existing cell lines, what we had to do is basically take what we have, because we're using the HLA homozygous approach. So we need to use really existing material for that, and for that reason, we had to develop mitigation strategies here for these existing cell lines, comprehensive ones, strong ones, we think. But like I said, as a complementary strategy, I think we would also now like to really fully fulfill these requirements from the start with new cell lines. So then just a few more slides on the current differentiation activities. So we are working to establish efficient, improved protocols that could form the basis for future GMP workflows for iPSC differentiation. So generation of interesting cell types of clinical importance. So the MSCs are one example. We've developed a simple one-factor-based protocol here, very robust and fast also. The MSC-like cells that we generate express typical MSC markers and show extensive proliferation potential as an example. So we hope to be able to generate cell banks of these MSCs soon, to be able to offer them to potential partners and clients. Another example is immune cell differentiation. So we acknowledge really the growing interest in cancer immunotherapy based on iPS cells, and we think that the existing protocols are not really perfect. Perhaps we definitely have potential for further improvement. And what we're doing here is we are trying to really optimize also the early stages of differentiation. So the initial induction of hematopoietic stem cells, or even earlier, the induction of hemogenic endothelium, so the precursor really of these hematopoietic stem cells. The data shows here that on day 7 we indeed have a cell type that is in line with the idea that these cells are hemogenic endothelium, so CD34 positive, 45 negative, and positive for endothelial markers like CD144. But then upon further treatment with a corresponding cocktail of molecules, this phenotype switches to a CD144 negative, CD45 positive, so in line with a switch to an HSC identity. And we then take these cells, which are naturally 3D cells, suspension cells, so we then differentiate these cells further in 3D format into NK cells, for example. And just another quick slide here on the genetic engineering activities at Catalent. So we are currently building workflows for gene editing, for knocking out genes at high efficiency, but also for knocking in genes into specific sites in the genome. We're trying again to build up efficient and robust, reliable workflows that we're then later on able to use for our own internal aims, but also to offer it to partners and clients outside Catalent. So the data here shows you the double knockout of HLA class 1 and class 2 in the context of creating so-called universal iPS cells. And it shows you that we've successfully isolated homozygous double knockout clones, and the FACS data here on the right-hand side basically validates that. So the wild-type iPS cells, upon stimulation with interferon gamma, induce HLA class 1, but the knockout clones obviously fail to do so. And likewise with HLA class 2, in this case, expression in the iPS cell ground state was very minimal. So we differentiated the cells into endothelial cells according to our new protocol. And then at least we obtained partial induction of HLA class 2, which I think was sufficient to show that the knockout clones are indeed deficient of HLA class 2. So we're quite optimistic that this presents a good basis for GMP workflow or GMP-like workflow in the future. So just to briefly summarize, we have iPS cells generated under GMP conditions. We are offering these iPS cells to license and form a basis for future clinical workflows. At the same time, we are also offering basically the workflows themselves as we have set them up, so custom reprogramming or QC services around the core workflow. And the current activities are really focusing more and more on differentiation protocols and GMP-compliant workflows based on these protocols, as well as on gene editing. So we hope to be able to offer in the future really attractive protocols and workflows to partners, and we actually right now also partnering at the development stage. Yeah, so thank you very much for your attention. I hope this was interesting, and I'm happy to take.
Many thanks, Boris, for the great talk. And I think the workflows that you just presented on GMP-compliant human iPSC generation, expansion, and the quality control analysis at Catalent cell and gene therapy set great examples in the field. And I think all of us, we can learn a lot from your work. And also, thanks for the nice introduction in the beginning. So my name is Chao Sheng, and I am the Global Product Manager for Regenerative Medicine Manufacturing at Miltenyi Biotec. So, and now, actually, I would also very quickly introduce the established workflows at Miltenyi Biotec for automated, closed, and GMP-compliant manufacturing of human pluripotent stem cells. Well, speaking of manufacturing of PSCs and their derivatives for clinical applications, so we all know that they are very challenging and complex endeavors, and most of the current manufacturing processes involve multiple very expensive instruments, very skilled operators, and high-class clean rooms. And also many separated open handling steps are also introduced in these workflows. Meanwhile, standard in-process control and quality control assays are required throughout the entire processes. In addition, well, in certain applications, the desired cell populations also need to be isolated in a sterile, gentle, and GMP-compliant environment. So all these factors together could really limit the manufacturing skill, compromise the reproducibility, at the same time, drive up the manufacturing cost. So how to make these very complex cell manufacturing processes standardized, scalable, and also more affordable for the end users? And here, there are some solutions from Miltenyi Biotec. So with the CliniMACS Prodigy, the separated open handling steps, multiple devices, skilled operators, and high-class clean rooms, they can be integrated into one automated and closed system. And the users could build customized PSC expansion and differentiation processes with the CliniMACS Prodigy. With the MaxQuant analyzer, then standardized iPSC QC assays can be realized by automated flow cytometry analysis. And finally, the MaxQuant title cell sorter can be applied to isolate the desired cell populations with a gentle, fast, and GMP-compliant cell sorting technology. Today, actually, we will focus on the CliniMACS Prodigy. So together with the single-use tubing sets, the CliniMACS Prodigy allows automated cell processing from starting materials to final products. Upon your request, it can automate all these different handling steps, including sample preparation, density graded centrifugation, cell washing, etc., until final product formulation. And based on the CliniMACS Prodigy platform, we have also developed a broad range of software applications for various cell types, for example, for CAR T cells. And for the adherent cell types, such as PSCs and their derivatives, so we have developed the adherent cell culture process. Using the CliniMACS Prodigy adherent cell culture process, cell cultivation can take place in two different units, the centricold unit and the external culture vessels. So first, there is a CliniMACS Prodigy chamber lies inside the centricold unit. It supports automated adherent and non-adherent cell cultivation. So the centricold unit also supports controls of the temperature and the concentrations of air and CO2. So this CliniMACS Prodigy chamber offers 100 square centimeter surface space. Well, if larger surface space is required, then external culture vessels can also be easily connected to the CliniMACS Prodigy tubing set via serial welding. For example, these multi-layer cell stacks. So the users can connect maximally 3 of these 5-layer cell stacks at the same time. This will offer roughly 10,000 square centimeter surface space. So actually, when we designed this software, so our goal is actually to make sure that it is flexible enough to culture different cell types. So that is why we modularized the individual cell handling steps. Now you can find these different modules on the main menu for density gradient centrifugation, for inoculation, for coating, medium change, harvest, etc. And the users can freely select and combine these different modules. As a result, very complex workflows, such as directed differentiation of PSCs, can be realized on the CliniMACS Prodigy adherent cell culture process. Within each module, the users can also set up the parameters according to their established SOPs. For example, in a coating module, the user can set up the coating temperature, coating time, the volume of the coating reagents, or according to their established SOPs. We have established workflows for GMP-compliant expansion of human MSCs and PSCs, as well as directed differentiation of PSCs into midbrain dopaminergic progenitors and cardiomyocytes. So next, we will quickly show you some results on GMP-compliant PSC expansion using the CliniMACS Prodigy. So for this workflow, we have first developed the iPS-Brew GMP Medium, which is manufactured and tested under the quality management system ISO 13485 and is designed following the recommendations of USP 1043 on ancillary materials. So it is currently available in bottles, but very soon we will also offer the medium in bag format. So we just saw in Boris's talk where they use this medium for GMP-compliant iPSC manufacturing. So in our experiment, the result shows that this medium enables very stable and efficient human PSC expansion as clusters or as single cells. So it also supports fast culture reinitiation after cryopreservation. And it is based on actually the same formulation as our research-grade CliniMACS iPS-Brew xeno-free medium, thus can support seamless transitions from research to GMP-compliant processes. Then, by applying this iPS-Brew GMP medium on the closed and automated CliniMACS Prodigy adherent cell culture process, the users now can choose and combine these different modules to automate all these complex handling steps. For example, coating, PSC inoculation, medium change, and harvesting, etc. We have also performed side-by-side comparisons between manual and CliniMACS Prodigy-based PSC expansion using our reaffinity recombinant antibodies and the StemX trilineage differentiation kit. And looking at the expression levels of the pluripotency markers and the trilineage differentiation potentials, so these two groups, the CliniMACS Prodigy versus manual control, so they really give rise to very comparable results. Then by using the centrifugal unit and the different sizes of external culture vessels, the users can also easily reach different PSC expansion skills on the CliniMACS Prodigy with much less open handling steps in comparison to the manual process. We know that establishing GMP-compliant PSC banks is a very important step in many clinical applications. So for this purpose, the closed and automated CliniMACS Prodigy adherent cell culture process, together with the iPS-Brew GMP medium and our QC reagents, so they could be very valuable assets. Here, just a very quick example. So recently, Dr. Raphael Kroll from the Saira Foundation in Japan has successfully transferred their manual clinical-grade IPS expansion workflow into the CliniMACS Prodigy adherent cell culture process. So he has already presented his work at the ISCR 2021 Tokyo Symposium and also at a joint webinar with us last year. Well, actually, that's already all from my side today. So this is the disclaimer of my presentation. So thanks a lot for your attention.